How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today, couples thinking about moving to Denver, Colorado. Here's some areas you should check out, and we're starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Evertson. Listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around Denver, Colorado, then this is the channel for you. So that subscribe button and notification icon you see on your screen, make sure you click on that as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And as much as I try to be a little informative here on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of Denver's most talented realtors. And we're helping people move here each and every day. So the number and email you see on your screen, know that I'm always the person answering your phone calls, answering your texts, answering your emails, there when and if you need me. Now that we're done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get to what we're here for, and that is couples thinking of moving to Denver, Colorado. Here are the areas I think you should check out. All right, so if you already checked out a video I posted last week for singles moving to Denver, Colorado, you may have already heard this spiel, but this is a series of videos. It's single, couples, we'll have families next week, and that's not to say that some of these communities are not interchangeable. It's not as though you need to live with someone or have a roommate to live in this area, or you have to live by yourself here. Really, I was looking at areas that single people who had moved here last week told me they enjoyed, and now couples this week. And certainly there are some locations today that we're going to cover where a second paycheck may be of assistance. So you may not be a couple, you may be moving out here with a roommate or a couple roommates. Some of these communities that may be beneficial to have some extra income coming in. So the first area we're going to talk about is the Highlands, Sloans Lake, and Edgewater. This is an area moving west out of Denver. The Highlands is still part of Denver, as is Sloans Lake. And then crossing Sheridan, you get into Edgewater. These areas, although three specific regions, are all interrelated in my humble opinion. I spent a decade myself living in Sloans Lake, and the thing that I love about these areas is that as you get farther out of Denver, the Highlands really gives you a great blend of urban-suburban living with all your shops, your boutiques, your walkability, your parks. Then as you get into Sloans Lake, one, you have the biggest body of water anywhere near Denver. It's only a couple miles around. It's not huge by any means, but a great park there. And you get more suburban as you move there. So you'll see more detached homes, more space, more, bigger yards in Sloans Lake. And then you get into Edgewater, now you're really getting more suburban. But in all of these communities, you still have plenty of walkability, plenty of amenities, your boutiques, your shops, your restaurants, your bars, your festivities, your community events, things of that nature. And you are still intertwined among the three. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you live in Edgewater, you're minutes away from the Highlands. If you live in the Highlands, you're minutes away from Edgewater and everything in between. So I think that when you're looking at the Highlands, you might find that the Highlands specifically is out of your price point. You might find that you don't want to spend that kind of money. Well, then take a look at a Sloans Lake. Take a look at an Edgewater. You might have the affordability for the Highlands, but you don't want that kind of hustle and bustle. The Highlands is still too urban, too much going on. Parking is tough, things of that nature. So now you're still gonna look in a Sloans Lake, in an Edgewater. So a lot to love about these communities, and I will say it in any video. I am a firm believer. I think the Highlands is the best neighborhood. I think it gives overall the best vibe because within these communities, you have everything you want. If you want to be in the heart of a neighborhood where there's walkability, you can have it. If you want to be in an area where it's a bit more suburb and the streets are a bit quieter, you can find it. And then affordability, you've got a vast array of different options. And one thing I would also mention about these three communities is because of your location, you have easy access to get right to Denver, and you have pretty easy access, even if you're in the Highlands, you have easy access getting up into the mountains. So really a great location there, centrally located. You can get just about anywhere you need to be quickly. The second area we're going to talk about, and a bit more suburb here, is Plat Park and Wash Park. And again, Similar to our previous conversation, I'm combining those two because while they are two distinct different areas, there's a lot of interrelation there. And I think that people in either neighborhood really take advantage of the other in the best way possible. We'll start with Plat Park. So Plat Park, a suburban community with two great stretches of road that I would talk about first. That is South Broadway and Pearl Street. So South Broadway is going to have a lot of bars, a lot of restaurants. It's a busier road and it's right on the edge of Plat Park. So I wouldn't necessarily say that South Broadway is walkable necessarily. I don't think you would walk it for blocks, but a ton of different amenities, whether it's restaurants, shops, boutiques, along that stretch. And then you have Pearl Street, which is extremely walkable. It's more of a neighborhood street filled with, again, same thing, restaurants, some of the best restaurants you're going to find, some of the best bars, some of the best boutique shops, mom and pop places, you name it. And then along that same stretch, you'll have schools, you'll have houses, you have different amenities along the way. So two great stretches. And then Plat Park has a variety of everything you want to live in, whether it's townhomes, whether it's condos, whether it's apartments, a lot of history within Plat Park. Now, just pop across the road and you get into the Wash Park area. Now, you'll see Washington Park. Locals will always call it Wash Park. And of all the parks in Denver, I love Sloan's Lake. I mentioned earlier in the video, but I think Wash Park is hands down the most popular park in Denver. Now I'll have some people debate. They'll say, you got Cheeseman, you got Congress, you got Commons. Go to Wash Park on a Saturday and tell me it is not the most popular park in Denver. It is packed. And I don't mean that in a bad way. So there's a couple ponds in Wash Park. There's basketball courts, there's tennis courts. There is a little bit of everything. There's people laying on the grass, there's creeks, there's different events for kids. And so that community around Wash Park, you still have a couple stretches of roads with restaurants and bars, and again, those amenities, that walkability that you want. And then you've got this great park. So your housing around that area tends to be at a higher price point. That's whether you're buying or renting than it would be, I don't want to say just about anywhere else in Denver, but more so than Plat Park. So when we talk about these two areas, I mentioned earlier, the Highlands has a pretty high cost to it. There's a premium to have all of that going on. Sloan's Lake gets a little easier potentially, and then Edgewater gives you more affordability. Kind of the same thing when we're talking about Plat Park and Wash Park. Your affordability is going to be a bit more challenging in Wash Park, a bit better in Plat Park. Neither one of them cheap by any means, but you have that going for you. And again, that interrelation, that people from Wash Park certainly go over to Pearl Street or South Broadway and enjoy themselves. And people in Plat Park, we have family that live in Plat Park and we love going over there and then walking over to Wash Park. Next up on the list, number 3 is Cherry Creek. Now in a video I made a couple years ago, I added Cherry Creek into the Moving Here single. And Cherry Creek is certainly a great neighborhood for someone single moving to Denver if they can afford it. But the feedback I got was Cherry Creek is one of the most expensive areas, or more expensive areas that you're going to find in Denver. Could be very difficult for someone moving here by themselves. Well, for couples, again, if you can afford, whether that's renting, whether that's buying, and I certainly would expect a lot of people moving here initially are going to rent. Cherry Creek is one of the best areas that you could think of to rent. Reason being, when you think about your quintessential, I love that term, quintessential, walkable areas, Cherry Creek has you covered. If you're even within a few blocks of Cherry Creek, you then have multiple blocks. We're talking 10 to 12 blocks of everything. All of your shopping, all of your restaurants, all of your bars, some of the most desired popular locations you can have, any type of food, any type of living. You've got a huge, the Cherry Creek Mall is one of the biggest. If there is something you need to buy, if you like to shop, eat, drink, Cherry Creek has you covered. But it's also in an environment, I mean, during the day, there's people everywhere, no doubt. Parking can be a disaster. And again, as I mentioned, Cherry Creek isn't cheap, but it also kind of quiets down early. So, if you still want a decent night's sleep, you don't like a lot of noise, by 8, 9 o'clock, Cherry Creek is pretty calm. So if you want to go get something to eat, easy to do. And Cherry Creek is located, it's still in Denver proper, It's located just east of downtown Denver, so you are 10 minutes from the city if you want. And you still have easy access to get out and about, but it's one of those communities where you really don't have to go anywhere. You could spend the majority of your time in Cherry Creek and still not go to the same place multiple times very often. And within that, I mean, you've got a ton of culture, a lot of art, a lot of just different things to do there. And from a working standpoint, I mean, it's a business hub. There are literally businesses everywhere. So, whether you are in real estate and lending, whether you're in fashion, whether you're in retail, whether you're in art, you name it, there are businesses galore in Cherry Creek. Our last two on the list are a bit more suburby for you, but still having a little downtown feel to them in a great location. Next up is Littleton, Colorado, located just south of Denver. Now, Littleton is a pretty massive suburb. If you Google Littleton, you're gonna see the incorporated area, and that's where we're gonna start. We're gonna talk about the area surrounding downtown Littleton. And that downtown Littleton, a historic strip of road, Main Street, again, just filled with walkability, everything you could have. I love Littleton for its mom and pop aspect. You do see some, brand name commercial, retail spaces, but a lot of locally owned shops, coffee shops, restaurants, bars, boutiques. Just keep saying boutiques, shops along that. A long stretch. Probably, I mentioned before, maybe a 20 to 25, maybe 30-minute walk if you're slow down this stretch of road. But historic downtown Littleton, and filled with, again, apartments, condos, townhomes. As you get just off the main stretch, plenty of housing. Littleton is more expensive the closer you get to downtown, especially if you're trying to get really close to downtown, but a lot of options there. And then if you're not into downtown Littleton, if you want a bit more suburb, Littleton's massive. So you could, you start looking, moving west out of Littleton, areas like Columbine, areas like King Carroll, Bomar, those are all still Littleton. They have Littleton addresses. So just about anything you could have. I am also a huge fan of Littleton for its location. Especially as you get closer to downtown Littleton, you're within 20 minutes of downtown Denver, and it's an easy jump to get on 285 or Hamden, and that will take you up into the mountains, and again, about another 20 to 25 minutes. There's different access points to get up to the mountains, but that's one of the quicker ones leaving Littleton. Now, certainly as you move farther west in Littleton, you're gonna be closer to the mountains, farther away from downtown, and more suburb the farther you get from that. But having those options, I think, and we'll talk about this in the next community I cover, having that ability to have that downtown stretch, that's something that's very important to me as I think about life. Having the ability to get to something quickly that's there, but also, if you want to get downtown to Denver, if you want to get to a restaurant, a concert, an event, you're right there. So great location there in Littleton. And number 5 on the list is Arvada, Colorado. Now, kind of similar to Littleton. Arvada, there's areas of Arvada that we call Arvada, and there's areas of Arvada we call Farvada. So Old Town Arvada, kind of right there in the heart. Again, one of the more walkable regions you're going to see. In fact, during the pandemic, they made some of the roads strictly for walking. They put up barricades, and so you have, your shops, all of the things that you want there. Within Old Town Arvada, you'll see plenty of apartments and condos, and then you have plenty of neighborhoods right around there. So you can find just about any type of housing you want within a quick stretch. I didn't say this about Littleton, I should add it here. Arvada and Littleton are both going to be filled with some historic communities that have been around forever, and they're also going to have a lot of new construction because of their size. So if you're into new construction housing, you might not find that in a Plat Park or a Wash Park, for instance, unless you have some serious cash. You can find that in an Arvada. You can find that in a Littleton. Arvada is also going to have a bit more affordability. It tends to be an area, and not to say Denver Metro is not a cheap area to live by any means, but whether you're renting or looking to buy, Arvada does provide some affordability, especially if you're a little more lenient on your location. And that's not to say you're not safe, but maybe you are a 15-minute drive from Old Town Arvada as opposed to a 5-minute drive. I think all of the areas we covered have a lot to do with the outdoors, Littleton included, being as big and suburban as it is. but Arvada among the best, and that's because of how many trails, how many creeks, how quick access you have to the Rocky Mountains there, and some really great lakes and different places to check out in Arvada. So if you're big into the outdoors, Arvada is going to have it for you there. So to kind of review, as we've talked about kind of moving from the city farther away. You've got the Highlands, Sloans Lake, Edgewater. That's going to be more of that suburban, urban feel and that quick, easy access to downtown Denver if you want. Plat Park and Wash Park, you get a bit more suburban, a bit more laid back, but still with some very cool areas to check out if you want something to eat, you want to go shopping, what have you. Cherry Creek, if we're talking strictly walkability and amenities, I don't know if there is a better neighborhood in the Denver metro area to consider a place that you can just leave your front door and have everything you could possibly need. And then as you get into more of the Littleton and Arvada, you could be close to their downtown areas and still have that walkability, or you could definitely get a bit more suburban, a bit more of the quieter streets, leave it to Beaver if you will, and still have access to those downtown areas. All of these areas very well located as far as getting down to Denver if you want to get down there for a dinner, a show, concert, sporting event, what have you, and all of them also solid for wanting to get up to the mountains and get away. Now, these are certainly not the only locations that I would consider, whether you are moving here by yourself, whether you're moving here as a couple, whether you're moving here as a family. Look out for last week's video on singles, look out for next week's videos on family, a lot of them interchanged. And I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to hear about different communities you are considering. And that is a perfect opportunity to hit me up with a phone call, with a text, with an email, knowing that I am always the person answering those for you. In the meantime, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everetts. That was Couples Moving to Denver, Colorado. Here's some areas you should check out. And until I see you next time, peace.